Hello, thanks everyone for joining and welcome. My name is Mwambi. I'm a postdoctoral scientist for impact evaluation with the World Vegetable Center. I'll be your moderator today. The World Vegetable Center here in Bangkok and I are very happy to host this event for partners in Asia to officially launch the newest member of the Humanitarian Standards Partnership, SEADS, the standards for supporting crop-related livelihoods in emergencies. So to get us started, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Wopereis, the director of the World Vegetable Center.
Thank you very much, Mercy. Dear participants, a very good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. It's really a great pleasure for me to welcome you on behalf of the World Vegetable Center to the SEADS launch event for Asia, hosted by my organization's regional office in Bangkok, Thailand. SEADS is a set of international principles and minimum standards that support those responding to humanitarian crises, be it human conflict or natural disaster, to design, implement, and evaluate crop-related crisis responses. Humanitarian crises are frequent in Asia. I'm living in Taiwan, which is regularly affected by earthquakes and typhoons that once every few years cause widespread destruction. There's probably no country in Asia that is not regularly affected by natural or man-made disasters. We experienced, for example, the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, the 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami, the 2011 Thailand floods, the 2015 Nepal earthquake, the civil conflict in Myanmar that started in 2021, of course, the 2022 recent Pakistan floods, and actually deadly floods regularly affect Bangladesh, parts of India and China, Cambodia, and many other countries. And then there was, of course, COVID-19, and we all do hope that the worst of that pandemic is now behind us. Dear participants, for people relying on agricultural production for their livelihoods, such events are usually devastating. Apart from human suffering and injuries, assets can be destroyed, seed stocks lost, and land may become totally unsuitable for crops. Emergency crop support can be of vital importance in such situations. But in the rush to help people in need, the quality of interventions is not always optimal. My own organization has regularly responded to crises by providing humanitarian programs with large numbers of small packets of vegetable seeds, of hardy and nutritious vegetables. Most recently, we did this during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, in Mali. However, we have lacked a clear strategy on how to do it well, and also lack sound evidence of impact. Standards and guidelines are important as these increase the likelihood of positive impact and reduce possible adverse effects of aid. But they also enhance accountability and transparency of humanitarian operations. World Vegetable Center therefore very much welcomes SEADS, and we plan to use it in our programming. We hope that many other organizations in Asia and elsewhere will do the same. With climate changing and geopolitical tensions rising, humanitarian crises are likely to intensify, and we better be prepared. I therefore very much look forward to this webinar, and thank you for your attention. Back to you, Mercy.
Thank you, Dr. Marco. We have about 121 people who have registered to join us, and we are thrilled to see such interest. I'm particularly interested in SEADS because it guides researchers like me who are less familiar with humanitarian context to effectively design and evaluate interventions. It also sets a great foundation for developing best practice guidelines for including specific crops like vegetables in crop support programs in emergency contexts. I understand from my colleagues that developing these standards has truly been a collaborative effort with hundreds of individuals and dozens of organizations around the world, helping in a variety of ways as steering committee, steering group, and field team members, contributing evidence, reviewing and commenting on the draft, and participating in simulation events. When you dig deep into the book, you'll find that it reflects the collective wisdom of the literature and field-tested knowledge. So before we go on, I have a bit of housekeeping issues. We'll start with our panel. We have 4 speakers lined up who I'll introduce in a moment. As your questions arise, please go ahead and pop them into the Q&A. And please do not put your questions to the panel in the chat, only in the Q&A, as I will be monitoring the Q&A. We have planned about 30 minutes at the end to get to your questions. Now, I'm delighted to introduce the 4 members of this panel. We have Mrs. Racey Henderson, who is the SEADS coordinator. We have Mr. Moyen Uddin Ahmmed, Program Manager of the Humanitarian Resilience Program with Islamic Relief in Bangladesh. Mr. Pradipta Kishor Chand, the National Lead, Climate Adaptive Agriculture and Food Sovereignty, Caritas, India. And then we have Mr. Ashta Prajapati, Market Development and New Business Lead with IDE, Nepal. At this point, I'd like us to start with Mrs. Racey, who is going to give us more information about SEADS standards. Over to you, Ms. Racey.
Thank you, Mercy. It's been a pleasure to coordinate this project over the last 3 years with the SEADS steering group, our field team members, all of our stakeholders, and my colleague Anne Rade at Tufts University, who is the brilliant mastermind behind these launch events. I'm thrilled to share SEADS with you all today. So SEADS is a set, as Marco mentioned, of evidence-based international principles and minimum standards that support the design, implementation, and evaluation of crop-related responses. It allows you to determine if a crop-related response is appropriate, necessary, and feasible, and helps you prioritize which crop-related response areas may achieve livelihood objectives given the context. It helps you track alignment of your project with minimum standards and the core humanitarian standard. And it provides tools for measuring impact from crop-related crisis response. As Mercy mentioned, SEADS is the newest member of the Humanitarian Standards Partnership, a collaboration between standards initiatives to harness evidence, expert opinion, and best practices, and to use this knowledge to improve quality and accountability in humanitarian response. SEADS fills a critical gap in humanitarian standards by providing guidance specific to crop production before, during, and after emergencies, and supporting alignment of these crop-related responses with the core humanitarian standard. It will be a great companion to the other standards, in particular to LEGS, the Livestock Emergency Guidelines and Standards, since, as many of you likely know, livestock producers also produce crops. As you also undoubtedly know, around the world, millions of people who are vulnerable to crisis rely heavily on crop production to support their livelihoods. According to the Global Humanitarian Overview for 2023, about 2/3 of refugees and asylum seekers originate from countries with food crises. And by the end of 2022, at least 222 million people across 53 countries are expected to face acute food insecurity. Many of these people produce food for themselves, their communities, and the food supply chain, and they generate income if they sell food they have produced. During a crisis, crop production and many associated services that make crop production possible may be disrupted, making it more difficult for people to meet their food and income needs. I am sure many of you have seen this firsthand. Using SEADS minimum standards in your projects can ensure the best possible programming and keep people from starving, from adopting negative coping mechanisms, and from migrating. Crop-related crisis responses that use SEADS principles and standards offer people assistance that can have sustained livelihood impacts. Responses aligned with SEADS principles and standards can help reduce the impact of future crisis, support a more sustainable use of natural resources, and enhance market systems linkages and viability. Anyone who is involved in crop-related response can use SEADS, but it is most useful for agriculture experts who are unfamiliar with humanitarian principles, programming, and evaluations, or humanitarians who are unfamiliar with crops and effective programming to support crop-based livelihoods before, during, and after emergencies. So SEADS covers all types of crops, perennial, annual, and horticulture, and all types of emergencies, rapid onset, slow onset, and complex. To get started using SEADS, first read the critical concepts in chapters 1 through 3, which underpin the SEADS minimum standards and an effective response. These chapters explain the SEADS evidence-based, livelihoods-based, and rights-based approach, as well as the importance of crop-related crisis response to livelihoods. They also introduce the SEADS principles. These principles are fundamental concepts that underpin all crop-related responses and support the best possible programming. They build on SEADS evidence-based, livelihoods-based, and rights-based approach and complement the humanitarian charter, the protection principles, and the core humanitarian standard, which are the foundations of SEADS. They do this by highlighting concepts that ensure crop production has livelihood benefits. These principles apply in all humanitarian contexts and should be considered in all types of crop-related responses. The 5 principles are livelihoods-based programming, use a participatory approach in all aspects of crisis response, commit to preparedness and early action, consider climate change and minimize environmental impacts, and establish coordinated responses. After the SEADS principles, the handbook provides minimum standards and practical tools for initial assessment, 3 technical response areas, and impact-oriented monitoring and evaluation. These minimum standards were selected using an approach focused on evidence, livelihoods, and rights. They are guided by a systematic review of over 250 project evaluations of crop-related responses in humanitarian crises, as well as feedback from hundreds of experts around the world during our global public consultation in 2021. The standards are based on a livelihoods approach because crop-related crisis responses support livelihoods, and a rights-based approach that encourages participation, empowerment, accountability, and non-discrimination when delivering crop-related responses. The minimum standards for each response area provide the standard itself, a short qualitative statement, and key actions or practical steps to attain the standard, and guidance notes, additional information to support the key actions, in the same fashion as other HSP standards. Let's take a quick look at each set of minimum standards. So initial assessment minimum standards cover timing and team competencies, assessment approach, questions and methods, and response area selection. Tools in this chapter will direct you to choose one or more response area. The SEED and SEED system minimum standards address assessment and planning in SEED responses, technical options and timing, systems-based assistance, crop and variety choice, and seed quality. The tools, equipment, and other non-SEED input minimum standards mirror those of SEED and SEED system minimum standards directly by covering assessment, technical options, systems, choice, and quality. SEED's crop-related infrastructure minimum standards cover assessment and planning, technical specifications, and location, lifetime, and timing. For each of the 3 response areas, SEEDS, tools, and infrastructure, SEADS includes practical tools to help you achieve the minimum standards in each area. These tools include decision trees, timing tables that help you determine when different technical options would be appropriate, and tables of disadvantages and advantages of different technical options in each response area. Last but definitely not least, SEADS provides minimum standards for impact-oriented monitoring and evaluation. These are the first of their kind in the HSP, and they expand on the key indicators we see in other HSP handbooks and provide minimum standards for participating evaluations, end of project reviews, and participatory impact evaluations. This chapter also provides tables to support aligning your crop-related responses with the core humanitarian standard on quality and accountability in emergency assistance. Okay, to wrap up, let's talk quickly about access. How do you get the handbook? Like other HSP minimum standards, inclusion is a core value for SEADS, so it was designed to be freely available, easy to use, and understandable by everyone. The easiest way to get a copy is to download it for free from the SEADS website. We will place a link in the chat. You can also view and search SEADS alongside other HSP minimum standards on the HSP website, or download the HSP app to take SEADS with you to the field. If you are like me and love a good hard copy book, you can purchase one through Practical Action Publishing. Links to all of these options are available on the SEADS website.
Thanks, Ms. Racey, for that great explanation of SEADS. Now, let's hear from each of other panelists about what SEADS means for their organizations and how they have started to or expect to use it. Let's start with Mr. Moyen. Over to you, Mr. Moyen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mercy. Well, let's start. Bangladesh is the epicenter of disaster and climate change in the world. According to the Inform Index, Bangladesh was among the top 30 countries most at risk of disaster in 2021. Bangladesh was ranked 7th in climate risk index in both 2022 and 2021. Bangladesh suffers from floods, especially the three types of flood: monsoon, flash, and tidal flood, cyclones, landslide, riverbank erosion, cold waves, heat waves, heavy rain, nor'wester, tornadoes, lightning, earthquakes, and saline intrusion. If you superimpose the duration of hazard period over locations, you may not be able to find out a single month, nor a district without a hazard or risk. All of this means great negative consequences for the people of Bangladesh. My organization, Islamic Relief Bangladesh, leads the Sphere Community for Bangladesh. The Sphere Community Bangladesh works in a well-established humanitarian coordination architecture linking government, clusters, NGOs, INGOs, humanitarian coordination task team, need assessment working group, local agencies, and other humanitarian actors. Sphere Community Bangladesh supports to these actors to maintain and practice humanitarian standards and core humanitarian standards commitments. The humanitarian community in Bangladesh is presently using crop-related information captured by the Need Assessment Working Group. Lately, recommendations from the Need Assessment Working Group and the Food Security Cluster have not prioritized cropping agriculture. I believe this is because there has been a significant gap. We have lacked appropriate tools and techniques on crop and crop-related livelihoods. in emergencies that link to core humanitarian standard and sphere standards. In fact, when SEADS was introduced in the Regional Humanitarian Partnership Week 2022 and Regional Sphere Focal Point meeting at Bangkok, Thailand last December, the global humanitarian community recognized and appreciated these new standards. Especially, I see that SEADS Principle 5, which is on establishing coordinated responses, will strengthen existing humanitarian coordination system in Bangladesh by including better guidance and solutions on crop and crop-related livelihoods in emergencies. SEADS Chapter 4, which covers initial assessment for crop-related crisis response, will improve the assessment done by the Need Assessment Working Group. The minimum standard 4.1 to 4.4 of initial assessment rightly addressed the factors, timing, competencies, approaches, methods, and response area selection, which we were seeking long before. I want to share my recent emergency response experience during the last flash flood 2022. In the first 72 hours after the flood, cattle food was first in the need list, even ahead of food for humans. In Bangladesh, cattle are farmers' most significant asset, and cattle food comes from crop residues. Thus, the loss of precious crops in food flood destroyed the resilience of number of farmers. We tried to get funding to support crop production for fodder, but funding partners had less interest on this. In the future, we hope to use SEADS initial assessment and response selection tools to support the humanitarian practitioners and fundraisers to have the same understanding of the farmers' need. Also, I must say that SEAD comprehensive support will strengthen anticipatory approaches, which is being practiced by humanitarian community now. Thank you, Racey.
Thank you, Mr. Moyen. That was really a great discussion of how you can use SEADS in your organization. Allow me now to invite Mr. Pradipta. Welcome, Mr. Pradipta. Hello, Mr. Pradipta. We can't hear you.
Is it audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. With regards to India chapter, India is almost home to the 121 millions of smaller agricultural land holdings. And out of 121 millions, there are 99 millions farmers that belong to these small and marginal categories of farmers. So in case of any kind of climate events and the hazards are coming up, though that hit hardest these group of poorest and most vulnerable farmer societies. So if we consider our national food availabilities and the food grains availability in the countries, that also sufficed by contributed by these categories of farmers to 70% of the national food grains. So considering these seed initial assessment, when I was going through regarding the assessment tool, though Caritas has a very simple, context-based tool for assessment in our crop-related crisis response, but seed definitely will that will help us in a great way to identify the response area that are likely to have a greater, the positive impact on the livelihoods. Also, this also help us to accessing the people's, the basic need, and to understand the, the nature of crisis, not only the nature of crisis and the impact of the livelihood, but also leads to, know the specific impact on the crisis of crop related, aspect of livelihoods. So Caritas will definitely looking forward to use the, the initial assessment questionnaires that has been listed under the SEAD, and that will also save our time, save our, the energy, and have a qualitative, assessment from the beginning of this project system. Next. And considering the both, human and natural disasters, we generally focused more towards the food and wash, as a key component to addressing all our emergencies, responses in a priority basis. But though we have a very, comprehensive systems of assessment, the rapid, detail, and protection, and other form of assessment, but SEADS definitely help us to, drafting the appropriate questions from the Appendix 4.1 that I could see very clearly without delay for a timely and effective initial assessment. And also, since we have a very established thematic desk in our organizations, that also SEAD also help us to, see and have a platform to inter-thematic integrations with us. For example, if we have humanitarian response exercises going on, then definitely we also can see the crop-related response within these, the area in consultation with the HANDRR desk. So these are some of the very vital, the insights that SEAD has provided us to look into, right from the initial assessments to the planning phase for a quality and effective program implementations. Next. So considering the principle 4, CI do have a tested approach on where we consider the agromet informations, rainfall, temperature data for last 10 years, the coping patterns of the local context, the agroecological practices, the traditional knowledge and wisdoms for a localized solutions. But definitely, SEAD will going to significantly help us to re-establish the traditional and the indigenous seed banks and for this, and also help us to recognize the farmers as a seed savers, and to enhance the capacity of community for a sustainable use and management of natural resources. Yep. And to provide institutional assistance for early warning and anticipatory action, and ensure appropriate preparation before a crisis occurs, to recognize the need to support people's resilience to future shock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pradipta. Indeed, I think it's very timely to have these SEADS standards for your projects interventions there. Now let's hear from Mr. Ashta.
Thank you very much, Mercy. It's my honor to be here as panelist. So first, I will start from the brief introduction about ID Nepal itself. ID has been working in Nepal since 1992, and we focus on the creation of market ecosystem with agriculture as core to resolve intractable problems being faced by Nepal's rural poor and create income and livelihood opportunities for them. We follow the human-centered design, SCD approach, we call it, to develop scalable solutions and innovations, which we call resource smart technology that fits within the local context of the rural communities and help them to get out of poverty and adapt to climate change. And over the last 30 years, ID has taken a leading role in micro-irrigation revolution. Started from drill pumps back in the 90s to drip systems, micro sprinklers, then more recently, multiple use water storage and distribution systems, and various, of course, like solar schemes now. ID has been promoting various climate smart agriculture technologies and integrated pest management packages for agriculture improvements, helping mainly smaller farmers to upgrade from subsistence to commercial farming. At the same time, helping them get more resilient to climate change and its adverse impact. Apart from all these, access to finance, WAS, gender equality promotion are some of our programmatic area of focus. Now, I'd like to explain briefly why SEADS is important to ID Nepal. Nepal's population is highly vulnerable to climate change effect due to their overwhelming dependence on natural resources for survival. With over 60% of population involved in agriculture, any of the climate shocks and stresses will somehow result in crop-related crises. The SEADS Handbook can serve as a good tool to design various possible interventions that help small farmers to build their preparedness and resilience to shocks and stresses, including invasive pests and, of course, the effect of climate change. ID, being an organization working with a market-based approach, we must say, has very limited exposure to the humanitarian response and approaches. Therefore, we see SEADS Handbook to serve as a more practical tool for our team members in times of crisis and crop-related disasters. It is very concise and yet comprehensive guidebook, I must say. We find it an easy to follow manual for delivering effective agricultural interventions in times of need. The practical tools and external resources provided in this book are, of course, of immense value. Too often, we find that small agricultural producers are left out of conversation around emergency response, recovery, and reconstructions. We see SEADS as an important opportunity, not only to develop global standards for emergency response that integrate with and support smallholder friendly adaptation and DDR planning process, but also to support preparedness and post-emergency recoveries. This manual is not only helpful for farmers affected by crisis, but also those who are a part of a larger crop production value chain. It will strengthen the ability of entire agro-ecosystem to respond during the situation of abiotic and biotic stresses, and of course, reduce the risks of total crop failure. The book focuses on participatory and human people-centered approaches, which are very relevant and valuable. So all in all, I would say SEADS fulfill a critical gap in the agriculture sector. Thank you very much, Mercy. Over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Ashta. Yeah, so having heard from our 4 panelists, we would like to conclude the panel session now. And before we open it up, I'd ask each of you a question of my own. And I believe that the audience have questions for you. So I encourage the audience to post their questions in the Q&A and also indicate who in the panel should answer your question. Now, Mr. Moyen, taking a slightly different look, how do you think SEADS could have helped you in Bangladesh that you talked about?
Well, Mercy, yeah, if you see, according to the need assessment working group during last flash flood 2022, it was found that 6,300 cattle affected and damaged. Crop estimation is 254,000 hectares of cropland. So response support provided there are food, water, hygiene materials, multi-purpose, cash grant, and shelter repairing. So it's actually did not touch that problem of fodder or cattle food. So flash flood is common for those areas in Bangladesh each year, and that's why our practice and the humanitarian community find, and I'm sure if SEADS was there before, we could make the response work more effective and efficient, addressing crop damages and including the crop farmers. farmers, because the lack of support in cattle food, it's made also the farmers community and their crop damages, their resilience or destroyed. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Moyen, for your concise response. I have a question also for Mr. Pradipta. Why is crop-related crisis response important, and how is Caritas India looking at it? Over to you, Mr. Pradipta.
He dropped on the call.
Okay. I think we have connection issues with Mr. Pradipta. So maybe now I ask a question to Mr. Ashta. Expanding out from how SEADS can help one's organizations, as Mr. Moyen discussed. Can you tell us how Nepal as a whole can benefit from SEADS?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Mercy. So in Nepal, like, for the agriculture sector, two of the greatest current challenges are climate change, or we call it variability, and food security. So for example, an unexpected and untimely excessive rainfall and flood in October 2021, as we call, caused massive damage to the ready-to-harvest crop across all the rice producing areas of Nepal. So that was like, more threatening to the food security and livelihood of country's small rice farmers. So we think, like, in such instances, a standard principle or guide that helps evaluate the appropriateness and necessity and practicability of some sort of like crop-related response, that is like of utmost importance. So we can, like, in general, SEADS handbook can benefit, like, of course, the whole country can benefit if used properly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Ashta, for sharing your insights. I'll ask a question to Ms. Racey, and then we jump into the questions that we have coming in the Q&A. And my last question to you, Racey, is, as mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, SEADS development has been an effort with the involvement of hundreds of individuals and dozens of organizations around the world. And I can imagine very different organizations with specific mandates. Was it difficult to combine the nature of different organizations that participated in this process? What does this diversity of mandate mean now as organizations around the world start to use SEADS?
Thanks, Mercy. Great question. It's interesting that many people probably associate standards with rigidity and wonder how we can all adopt the same standards given our diverse mandates. In fact, the nature of standards is that they support flexibility and diversity in standard operating procedures or in organizational policies. So standards support local contextual and organizational analysis to guide your decisions on program choices. These standards describe the minimum conditions for life with dignity, and they're not how-to manuals. We leave that part up to you. Standards should be used alongside technical references as well as organizational expertise. Actually, during the development of SEADS, we specifically sought input from diverse organizations because we considered this one of the strengths of SEADS. By taking into consideration all these different perspectives on crisis response, including different mandates, SEADS is likely to be useful to a broader audience.
Thank you so much, Ms. Racey. Yeah, I could keep asking questions, but I'm sure you all have questions too. So let's open it up to the audience. And we've got a few questions in the Q&A. So I'll start with that of Edmundo Cabo. You asked that you said SEADS standards are of interest to humanitarians and related to crops. Can you suggest linkages that connect SEADS and CCM or area-based interventions? I think this question is for Racey.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Edmundo. It is very relevant to the area-based approach, as well as CCCM, as well as camps and management in camps for a few reasons. So one is that in camps, you want to consider, if you're going to consider any kind of food production for those people living in camps or any population that the CCCM standards touch, if you're going to consider crop production, SEADS can support you in knowing what choice of crop to select, what variety you might select, what's the timing that's appropriate. It will suggest what tools and equipment and other inputs might be necessary, also what infrastructure you might need. So it can help if crop production is an assistance activity that may be going on in camps. In addition, the folks, depending on the context, of course, agriculture is a land-based, an area geography-based activity. So should you be considering an approach that takes into consideration the character of an area, whether that's the area around a camp or whether it's an area that is in insecurity or has movement of populations, SEADS can help you assess the context within which a crop assistance is appropriate. Is it safe? Are fields accessible? Is it a feasible assistance? So I would say, just to repeat quickly, in terms of that, you want to look at the initial assessment chapter and response identification, response area identification standards in particular. So it'll really help in that way.
Thanks very much, Ms. Racey, for your answer. Yeah, I think we have a hand raised by Sanat. Could you please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question?
Oh, thank you, Marcy. I am from Bangladesh Coast Foundation, and we are working in the coastal area of Bangladesh. Actually, my question to Pasti in Nepal, IECD, that what is the situation of the adaptation? He has told that the very vulnerable on the impact of climate change related to the agriculture. What is the adaptation process in Nepal? If we tell in Bangladesh, we have developed a lot of adaptation crops, seeds, and other paddies also, rice also. So can you tell us what are your adaptation approach in Nepal, please? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sanat. So, I mean, I must say, like, as I have already mentioned, so IDE being an organization working in agriculture and more like market-based approach, we don't have that much of exposure in terms of humanitarian response and those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, country has recently moved into this like central to federal system, and we have all those local adaptation plan developed at the local level, and we have some sort of those mechanisms developed.
Okay, great to hear from you, Ashta. Yeah, I see we have one other hand from Pepin. Pepin, over to you, please. Unmute and ask your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Mercy. I was wondering about the next steps for SEADS. Is it because the book is now published? Does this mean that the people behind SEADS will stop, or will there be continuation? And also would like to know, maybe from Racey, is there any support in terms of training that SEADS is providing for organizations that would like to use the standard? Thanks.
Thank you, Pepin, for that forward-looking question. Yes, SEADS is going to be, as other standards have been, the best way for you all to use it effectively is to be trained in it. And SEADS next phase intends to design a training program that will be a global training of trainers program, as well as a few other types of trainings depending on different levels of users. We also hope to have a future phase where we collect additional impact. We do impact assessments to collect additional evidence, because as I mentioned, the evidence of impact from crop-related responses on livelihoods is very limited. So we do hope to have a future phase. And if you are signed up on our e-list, which is right here on the screen, you can go to our website and then sign up on our e-list. You will be the first to know about when those training programs will be taking place. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Racey. Yeah, indeed, as we discuss about SEADS and what is next, I'm also wondering what the panelists think. And I want to ask Mr. Moyen, how does the SEADS contribute to an anticipatory approach? In your case, could you share your views about this?
Well, thank you, Mercy. So here in Bangladesh, you see the Islamic Relief Bangladesh also implementing a forecast-based early action project for specifically monsoon floods. I'm going to state according like from that project learning. So this anticipatory approach actually includes readiness period and early action period. There is also trigger between these two parts. Simply, SEADS can contribute in anticipatory approaches by two ways. It may establish a link between anticipatory actions and humanitarian actions through a fruitful manner. And chapter 7, which is crop-related infrastructure of SEADS, will directly strengthen the anticipatory actions as it has addressed the pre-production, production, and post-production stages of crops. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moyen. We still have time for questions, so feel free to keep dropping your questions in the Q&A. We have a question here from Shahriya Kabir. This question is directed to Ms. Racey, and the person is asking, did donor agencies engage during the SEADS standard development process? Because from my understanding, the acknowledgement on the standards is very important for future funding.
Indeed, it is. Yes, we had great engagement by BHA, USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. We also engaged with ECHO as well as FCDO, and we continue to, from a large donor's perspective, we did have great engagement from them. We also have organizations on our steering group that do fund in their own way assistance, like, for example, FAO, ICRC. So we had excellent engagement from them. And the process of ensuring that SEADS is integrated into, for example, requirements that donors have for implementers in terms of what standards they reference when they're designing and justifying the approach that they want to take. That process can take much longer to get actual changes made, but we are engaged with those donor agencies and do hope to continue to work with them to make those concrete changes.
Great. Yeah, I think that was a great question, how to engage these donors in the process of using SEADS and even development. At this point, I would like also to ask a question to Mr. Ashta. How would the SEADS Handbook assist government or policy level interventions?
Well, thank you very much, Mercy. So this is an important question, of course. So working in Nepal, I mean, sometime we really feel like, at the times of adversities, we see some sort of gap in our policies and, preparedness, that are not well equipped to address and mitigate the immediate responses of disaster. So particularly when it comes to the food security. So therefore, of course, SEADS Handbook could play a vital role in policy formation and implementation. And very next step for the implementation of this handbook, we see engaging a lot of government actors along with other organizations working in the sector.
Good morning.
So, we have been implementing one of the USAID BHA project right now in Nepal, and we are in touch with all of other organizations working, with the funding of the major donors. So we see that engaging, involving with those partner organizations, and besides that, involving government agencies and actors in the conversation will help to some sort of come up with very to fulfill the gap in the response we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashta. And I'm still checking the Q&A. If any of you has a burning question, you could drop it there. Otherwise, I think we do not have more questions. So I'll go ahead with the session. So what's a great and insightful conversation we have had in the past 1 hour or so. We have learned about SEADS and its importance in helping us determine, prioritize, track, and measure crop-related responses. Ms. Racey has highlighted the minimum standards covered in SEADS, including initial assessments, SEADS and SEAD systems, tools, equipment, and other non-SEAD inputs, crop-related infrastructure, and that SEADS includes practical tools to help achieve these minimum standards. From Mr. Moyen, we have learned how SEADS principle can strengthen existing humanitarian coordination system in Bangladesh. And Mr. Ashta has emphasized the use of SEADS Handbook to design crop interventions in Nepal, contributing to closing the inclusion gap that farmers are often left out of emergency response, recovery, and reconstruction programs. Now I'm going to ask for your help with SEADS in terms of to help SEADS with the monitoring and evaluation. And at this point, we will have a poll and a simple question to be answered. So I ask all of you to vote in this question, to participate in this poll, submit your responses. And the question is, how likely are you or your organization to use SEADS in your work? We have different options there: extremely likely, extremely unlikely, unlikely, neutral, likely, extremely likely. Yes, I see that some of us are still answering, so I'll give a couple of minutes to finish that. Well, great. So it's interesting to see how extremely likely that most of you will use these seeds for your work, given that SEADS is quite new. These standards have been launched just like 2 months ago, and they have generated great interest among many of you. About 30% extremely likely to use it, 60% are likely to use, and then we have those that are neutral and those that are unlikely to use them. Only 7% are unlikely to use. Yeah, we wish actually we could get more information on why you are voting for this in this particular way, but let's go ahead and close this poll. So yes, as Racey mentioned, you can get the SEADS Standards Handbook in a variety of ways for free on the SEADS website. I hope that you will use SEADS and encourage your colleagues to do so. If you have questions or feedback, please get in touch with the coordinator by email. We have shared the link on how you can access the SEADS Handbook in the chat. So feel free to use that link. This concludes our event today, and thank you all for participating. Goodbye.